We're given the graph of y equals fx, and in part A, we're asked to write down the coordinates of the turning point of the graph. The turning point of the graph is the point at which the graph changes direction. So we can identify that the turning point of the graph is over here. This coordinate here marks the point where the graph goes from decreasing to increasing. So let's write down the coordinates of this point. If we go vertically upwards, we can see that the x-coordinate over here is 1. And then if we go horizontally, we can see that the y-coordinate is -3. And so we can write down that the coordinate of the turning point of the graph is 1, -3. In part B, we're asked to write down estimates for the roots of fx equals 0. And now to make this easier, we're going to imagine that y equals fx. So now, when y equals 0, we can take a look at the graph to convey this. Y over here is equal to 0. So the line where y equals 0 is this line right here, which we can see is actually the x-axis. So the roots of fx equals 0 is when y equals 0. And so we need to find the point at which the graph crosses the x-axis. We can now identify the points at which the graph crosses the x-axis. So we can make a note of this over here. Now, let's look at the point over here. We have 2 and we have 3. So we can see that this point is around 2.5, which means this is 2.6, 2.7, 2.8, 2.9, and 3. Now the point at which the graph crosses the x-axis seems to be in between 2.7 and 2.8. So we can say that the graph crosses the x-axis at 2.75, which we'll write down over here. But that's not the only route, because we made a note of the other one on the other side. So let's look at this. It's somewhere between 0 and -1. Now this point over here is -0.5, which means this is -0.6, -0.7, -0.8, -0.9, and -1. And so the graph seems to cross the x-axis between -0.7 and -0.8. So we can say that the graph crosses the x-axis at -0.75. And so we've written down the points at which the graph crosses the x-axis, which is exactly what part B was asking us to do, because these are the roots of fx equals 0. And so the answer to part B is 2.75 and -0.75. Now for part C, we need to come back to something that we mentioned before. We said that we'll let y equals fx. So for f1.5, we already know that the x value is 1.5. So y equals f1.5. And so we're trying to find the y coordinate when x is equal to 1.5. So if we go back to our graph, we can identify that the point at which x is equal to 1.5 is over here. And we're going to use a green line so as not to get confused with the purple lines. So we'll draw a line over here where the x coordinate is 1.5. Now we're trying to find the y coordinate. So the point at which this meets the graph of y equals fx is over here. So let's draw a horizontal line to find the y coordinates. Now we need to identify what value of y this is. So we have -2 over here and -3 here. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 intervals in between that. So we can say that this is -2.2, -2.4, -2.6, -2.8, and -3. So now we can see that the y value of this coordinate is -2.8. So if we go back to part C, we're asked to use the graph to find an estimate for f1.5, which means we're finding the y coordinate when x is equal to 1.5. And we did that in the graph, and we can see that the y coordinate is equal to -2.8. So an estimate for f1.5 is equal to -2.8.